So I'm just coming back from a village in the south of Hebron called Daharia. 2 weeks ago, a father and his son were beaten up by hilltop youth, by violent settlers, who for no reason just beat them up for coming to their land, to their private lands. And the idea of this violence, it's not just violence. This violence has a goal, and the goal of this violence is make the Palestinians be scared in order to leave and then take over the land. And after I said this, I want to start from, it's hard to start from the beginning. I think the starting point to understand our situation is to understand what happened since the last elections. As you know, we are now unbelievably closing 4 years of the most extreme government ever in the state of Israel. And I think it's unbelievable because when this government was elected, I don't think any of us would imagine it would maintain so long, especially after such a big, crisis like the 7th of October, which they have big accountability for, and still they're in control. So, when this government was, and I'm saying this government because many people, they want to start describing what happened, and they start at the 7th of October, but I think that's not the crucial point. So let's start with the fact that the settler movement, they had a goal. The goal of the settler movement was to take over the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, by building settlements. And they believed that if they will bring enough people to live inside the West Bank, the Judea and Samaria will maintain Jewish. Sadly for them, it didn't work. They didn't, at the last years, until the government came, there was more people living the West Bank than people who were coming to the West Bank. And then you lose the demographic war on this area because you still have much more Palestinians than Jews. And then came a new idea. They understood that you can't really take a lot of dunams, a lot of land, by people. And then they kind of developed a new technique. And this technique is called the outpost, the agricultural shepherding outpost, or in Hebrew, chavot. Some people in Israel call it ma'apechat hachavot, the revolution of the chavot. And the reason it's a revolution is that it's totally changed the ground. Because instead of having a small settlement, or a big settlement even, like Efrat or Ariel, that has a fence all around it and with a lot of people, when you have an outpost, all you need is one couple of boys, and then you can control hundreds of dunams. And you don't need a lot of people to control them because they use shepherding as a weapon. They get from the state amount of goats or sheep, and then they get some of paper, and in this paper they get approval to shepherd in a very wide area, very wide geography. And when they shepherd in the geography, they kind of use the herd as a weapon. They say wherever we shepherd as Jewish shepherds, sheep, the Palestinians can't enter and we control it. And they use it with a legal system called state lands. And that's also something very controversial because, in Israel now, everyone is talking about this idea of state lands. And when right-wing Israelis hear the word state land, what they imagine is land for the Jews, which is not true. State lands means it's land that belongs to the state and the future state for development, not someone private. And Israel is occupying this land, and this is why Israel is permanently holding the state land, but they must keep it for the future Palestinian state, for Palestinians to rebuild and grow and use this as state land for all the people who are living in this land, who are mainly Palestinians. But the extreme right in Israel find this like legal term and find a way to convince the audience in Israel that state land means state for the Jews. You know, even in high school or in pre-army gap years, we learn, probably you heard about the Oslo agreements. During the Oslo agreements, Israel and Palestine, and the Palestinian Authority divided the West Bank to 3 areas, A, B, and C. A is a Palestinian control, totally civilly and military. B is civilly controlled by Palestinians and military controlled by Israelis. And C, they say Selanu, ours. This is how they describe it. They say C area is for the Jews. But in the reality, there is many Palestinians that live in or used to live in the C areas. So the moment this like outpost revolution started, the idea was to kind of occupy all of the C areas and find a way to chase away all the Palestinians from the C areas. And the first step was to pick the most vulnerable communities, which are the Bedouins. Why? Because they are economically based on shepherding. And when you are based on shepherding, it's easy to make you live because the sheep move. It's not like agriculture. Sheep can move from place to place. So we can say that since this government was elected, and even more since the 7th of October, the 7th of October made the circumstances and the public sentiment fit and be available to do the most extreme plans. And the first extreme plan was, let's deport all the way they did it is look on the map where is a shepherding community, and then build outposts all around this shepherding community. I can give you an example that we saw in our eyes, a village in Jordan Valley called Ras En El Uja, which doesn't exist anymore, actually. So in the case of Ras En El Uja, what they do, they first opened one outpost at one side, then another one, then another one. Then they start with what they call soft violence. What is soft violence? Soft violence is using your Jewish ships to shepherd and take all the food for all the crop for the Palestinian sheep, and then they would not have where to shepherd their own sheep. And this is the first stage of how you evacuate a community. If this doesn't work and the community sticks in the land, although they cannot shepherd it, they move to the second stage. The second stage is going with your ship through the village. And if this doesn't work, every time something doesn't work, it gets more extreme. If this doesn't work, they go and burn the mosque or the school. And if this doesn't work, they go with the hilltop youth and open a settlement, an outpost in the middle of the village. This is what happened in Ras El Uja. The moment this is happening, the moment and it's so graphic, they just open kind of like a shade place in the middle of the village and stay there day and night and scare the families. And at some point, the Palestinians are so scared and they don't have any like future option how to feed their ship. So they take their things and leave. And I want to say something very sad. Unfortunately, this stage in the plan is kind of finished. There is barely Palestinian shepherd communities rest in Area C. There is just a few communities left in the Jordan Northern Valley, and I don't really believe they will maintain. But I'm saying all of this because it doesn't finish here. The moment they finish the first stage, and the first stage was marking the shepherd communities in Area C making their life miserable until they leave. Now the next stage, he has two sides. The first side is moving from the shepherd community, from the Bedouin, to the agricultural communities, which is the Falahim. I'll just explain the strategy. The strategy is that many Palestinians, they are based on agriculture from their village. And especially after the 7th of October, they are based on this economy even more because they don't get permits to work inside Israel. So they must grow their own food. So what's happening now? You know, when you're a farmer, you have the village, but the land, your agricultural lands are in the wadis, in the valleys outside of the village. So they open at every entrance of the valley. They open a small outpost, legal or illegally, and then the moment the Palestinians are trying to reach their land their private land, in order to work it, the hilltop youth go down from down to the Wadi and started making provocations. The reason they are making provocations is that in the West Bank we have two law systems, one system for the Jews and one system for the Palestinians. The Jews are they have a defense of the Israeli law, and the Palestinians don't have it because they are under military law. Therefore, those hilltop youth, if their provocation works, let's say they use gas, pepper gas, so they wait till the Palestinians would do any action to avoid them coming. Let's say go down and try to take a rock. And if this is what the Palestinians are doing, they have an excuse, and then they use warm weapon and they shoot them. And this is why you hear so many Palestinians that are killed and murdered at their land. It all starts from a provocation until they have an excuse to shoot. And the moment one Palestinian is killed, all the Palestinians are terrified and they don't want to come back to their land. So actually we have two options. One option is what we all hear about, settler violence. And the settler violence happens when the Palestinians don't give up until it ends in a violent situation. The second option that happens even more and we don't hear about it is when the Palestinians come to the land, they see the hilltop youth, they don't want to be beaten, they don't want to be shot at, so they just leave. And then there is no violence, but there is something else, and that's stealing. They just steal the land. And then, why it's so important? Because after a while, after a period, that Palestinians don't work their land, the country goes through like a kind of a very weird legal process and declare the land that is not worked as a state land. And then after it's a state land, you can legally announce a legal outpost on over something that used to be a private Palestinian land. That's one thing that's happening. The other thing that's happening is intentionally to try and make Oslo agreement collapse. How do they do it? First of all, they declare it publicly in all the Israeli media channels. If you open Israeli media channels, you'll see that all the right wings are talking about canceling Oslo. The second thing they do is started invading B areas, B and A areas. And I can tell you that at the last months, 20 outposts were built, at least 20 outposts were built over Palestinian land in B area, which is supposed to be even not a state land, it's a Palestinian land. So this is the sad part we are facing. The second part, maybe I want to say what's the end goal. It's important to understand. And I want to say what's the end goal because many people use the term settler violence. And I want to say it's not a settler violence, it's a government violence. There is a plan, a policy. This policy was never given to the Israeli audience to vote for. They are just using the government to make this policy work, but because they don't want to have backlash from Europe or from America, they don't vote about it. They just magshimim it. They just make it happen. And this is why it's a problem to say only. And the second thing is that there is two branches for this plan. One is institutional, and the second one is not institutional. The institutional way is declaring state lands, building settlements, building legal outposts, declaring archaeological sites, declaring nature reserves, all of them in order to chase away the Palestinians from their lands. But the illegal branch is these youths that are used to provoke or do violence toward the Palestinians, and because the army could not do officially the violence, so they are based on the Hilltop youth violence, and when the Hilltop youth with their violence succeed to make the Palestinian run away, they use the legal violence to declare this land as a state land and then take it for a settlement. I think that's kind of I think that's kind of how the big plan look like. The end goal, Smotrich wrote it actually in a very important essay, which is called Tochnit HaAchra'a. I'm not sure how to say it in English. The defeating plan. And his idea is at the end to make Palestinians, first of all, be closed. To be closed, first of all, they want to segregate them from each other. Then to make and divide and to close them with gates into kind of like closed zones and closed area. The second part, after they would disconnect all the Palestinians from each other and close them into small lands, they want to have kind of like they used to have it in Israel before 66, kind of a military total control on them, and then give them one of three choices. The first choice is to give up on your national identity and on your option to vote and stay in the land as a second class citizen. The second option is to die, to fight, and then they will kill you and to die. And the third option is to be deported and get money for leaving the state. And we are just running straight into the assumption, or into like making this plan. And I'm not sure what will remain until the elections, because, and that may be my last sentence, the situation on the land in the West Bank really became opposite. Today, the Palestinians in the West Bank are all closed in fences. They can't go to the open areas. If they go to the open areas, they are vulnerable and they might be shot or by the army or by settlers. And Jews are all over. They can walk freely. They are not afraid anymore. And if a Palestinian sees a Jew, even from far, he's shaking from fear because he knows because many of those Jews, violent settlers, or sometimes even some of the soldiers are trying to harm them, and say publicly that they want to chase them away. I think I have more time, or are we finished? Finished. Amazing.
One last sentence if you want.
The last sentence that I want to say, and that will also move to Efrat, is that although the situation is so depressing, and although it looks like we are going to lose this war, I think that we have agency, and we as Jews who see the situation, we have the obligation to take action and prevent it from happening. And we need, and it's like kind of our, let's say it's our most important battle. It's a battle for the morality of the Jewish people and for Israel. Thank you.